My name is Dawei, and from the day I could remember the scent of the earth after rain, I have known only hunger, work, and the tired sighs of my mother. Our house stood at the edge of the village, if you could even call it a house. The walls were thin as paper, the roof patched with broken bamboo and reeds, and when the wind howled through the valley, it whistled through the cracks like a ghost lamenting in the night. Every creak of the boards was a whisper of how poor we were. I lived with my mother alone. My father had died when I was 10, leaving behind only a name carved on a wooden tablet and a debt that followed us like a curse. Since then, life had been a constant negotiation between starvation and survival. Each morning, before the sun had climbed over the distant mountains, I rose. I washed my face in the cold stream, dressed in a rough hemp tunic, and set off to the village square, where people with coin and power came to assign errands to the desperate. Dawei, fetch water from the west well, one would say. Dawei, deliver this letter to the physician's house. Dawei, sweep the courtyard before noon. Every task earned me a handful of copper coins, or, if luck blessed me, a small bowl of rice. I did not complain. Those coins bought medicine for mother's cough, and those grains filled our stomachs enough to face another day. But poverty has a way of stealing more than food. It takes away your dignity, one small piece at a time. Sometimes, when I ran errands for the rich, I caught my reflection in their polished doors. A young man in his early 20s, tall but too thin, with eyes that looked older than his years. My mother always said I was handsome, with fair skin and dark eyes that reflected kindness. But what use was beauty in a world that valued silver more than souls? At night, Mother and I would sit by the dim flame of our oil lamp. She would cough, then smile through the pain. "You've worked hard again, my son," she would whisper. "You shouldn't push yourself so much." "I'm fine, Mother," I always said, though my hands trembled from exhaustion. "Once I earn enough, I'll fix the roof, buy better clothes for you, maybe even get you a proper bed." Her smile, that gentle, fragile smile, was the only warmth that kept me alive. Days turned into weeks, and weeks blurred into months. Then one morning, I noticed something different. Mother didn't rise to prepare porridge. Her breathing was shallow, her skin pale as snow, her lips trembling. Panic surged in me like a tide. "Mother!" I shook her gently. "Mother, wake up!" Her eyelids fluttered open, and she smiled faintly. "Don't worry, Dawei, it's just the cold." But I knew it wasn't. Her cough deepened that night. Blood stained her sleeve. I tried everything. Begged the local healer, sold the little wooden ornaments my father had carved, ran double the errands, even went without food for days. Still, it wasn't enough. The physician demanded silver, not copper, and every time I left his door empty-handed, the weight of failure crushed my chest a little more. One rainy evening, as thunder rolled over the hills, I sat beside her bed, holding her frail hand. Her eyes, once bright as spring water, were dull with pain. "Dawei," she whispered, if I can't stay much longer." "Don't say that," I shouted, tears spilling before I could stop them. "You will live. I'll find a way, I swear it." I ran out into the storm that night, the wind tearing at my clothes. There was only one person left I could turn to, Master Sheng. Sheng was one of the wealthiest men in the region, the kind of man who could buy loyalty with a glance. He was in his late 30s, sharp-featured, and always dressed in silk robes that gleamed even in candlelight. I had run errands for him before, delivering messages, cleaning the stables, polishing the jade statues in his hall. He paid well, but his gaze, it always made me uneasy. There was something possessive in it, something dark. When I reached his manor, drenched and trembling, the guards laughed. "Poor Dawei, you again? You think Master Sheng will see a beggar at this hour? I need to see him," I shouted, desperation breaking my voice. "It's about my mother, please." Perhaps the gods pitied me, for Sheng himself appeared at the top of the stairs, his robe draped carelessly over one shoulder, his hair loose. "Dawei," he said, raising a brow. "You look half-drowned." I dropped to my knees before him. "Please, Master Sheng. My mother, she's dying. I beg you, lend me silver. I'll pay it back, I swear. I'll work for you for life if I have to, please." The rain fell harder. My words came out choked with tears. For a moment, I thought he would turn away. But instead, he smiled, a slow, knowing smile that made my heart tighten. "I can help you," he said softly. "But there will be conditions." "Anything," I said without hesitation. "Please, anything." He stepped closer, his shadow falling over me. "If you cannot repay me in time, then you will become mine. You will marry me and give me children." I froze. His words pierced through the thunder like lightning. For a long time, I couldn't breathe. But then I thought of my mother's fragile body, her fading pulse. What was my pride compared to her life? I accept, I whispered. Sheng's eyes gleamed in the dark. Good. Then let us seal our agreement. He tossed me a pouch of silver coins, heavy enough to save a life, heavy enough to damn one too. I clutched it to my chest and bowed low, my tears mixing with rain. Thank you, Master Sheng, I said, though the words burned my tongue. I ran through the storm, my heart pounding, my breath catching. When I reached home, I rushed my mother to the physician that very night. Days passed, and she began to heal. Her color returned, her laughter echoed again through our little hut. For a short, precious while, it felt like the world had forgiven us. But in truth, that was the moment my fate was sealed. That night, as I lay awake beside the sound of her breathing, I stared at the ceiling and whispered into the darkness. Mother, I'll protect you no matter what, even if it means selling my soul. And somewhere in the shadows beyond the walls, I could almost feel Sheng's eyes watching, waiting for the day I would come to pay the PR. The days after my mother's recovery were the most beautiful I had ever known. For the first time in years, she could walk beyond the front door, humming softly as she swept the yard. The pale light of early spring fell over her hair, turning it silver instead of gray. I used to stand at the doorway, watching her move, unable to believe she was still with me. We ate together again, simple meals of rice and salted vegetables. She would scold me gently for working too hard, and I would laugh, pretending not to notice the ache in my arms. It was as though the heavens had finally shown mercy to our humble home. But peace built on borrowed silver cannot last. Every day that passed, the weight of my promise pressed heavier against my chest. I still had Sheng's money pouch, or rather, what was left of it. The physician's fee had consumed most of it, and the rest went to food and medicine for Mother's slow recovery. I tried to save what I could, but no matter how many errands I ran, no matter how much I begged for extra work, the debt only loomed larger in my mind. Mother noticed my worry one evening as we sat outside, watching the fireflies rise from the fields. You've been distant, Dawei, she said quietly, stirring the small pot over the fire. Did something happen while I was ill? Her voice was soft but carried that motherly sharpness that always saw through my silence. I looked away quickly, pretending to adjust the firewood. No, Mother. I'm just tired. She smiled faintly. Tired, yet your eyes look haunted. You've taken on too much again. Promise me, Dawei, you won't carry the world alone. I wanted to tell her everything. That I had sold my freedom to save her life. That there was a man waiting in the shadows, counting the days until I could no longer pay him back. But I couldn't. Her health was still fragile, and the truth would only break her heart. So I forced a smile. I promise. The lie tasted bitter. Weeks passed. The flowers bloomed. The village came alive with the scent of new harvests. And then, one afternoon, the peace shattered. It was nearing sunset when a servant from Sheng's household appeared at our door. He was tall and cold-eyed, his silk robe a stark contrast to our mud-caked floor. Dawei, he said curtly, handing me a scroll sealed with Sheng's crimson emblem. Master Sheng requests your presence. My fingers trembled as I accepted it. The message was short. It has been 2 months. Come to settle your debt. I could almost feel the words burning into my skin. I didn't even tell Mother where I was going. I simply said I had work to do and left before the fear could chain my feet to the ground. Sheng's mansion was a world apart. Towering gates, lacquered wood, and courtyards lit by hundreds of golden lanterns. The air smelled of sandalwood and wine. Every time I came here, I felt like an intruder in a dream that wasn't mine. When I entered the main hall, Sheng was waiting. He reclined on a cushioned seat, dressed in dark blue silk embroidered with dragons, a wine cup in hand. His gaze followed me like a cat watching a cornered bird. Dawei, he said smoothly, smiling as if we were old friends. It's been too long. I bowed deeply. Master Sheng, I came to repay what I can. I took out a small pouch of coins, all that I had managed to save. When I placed it before him, it looked pitifully small against the polished table. He raised a brow. Is that all? I will work harder, I stammered. I'll repay you fully, I swear. He laughed. The sound was beautiful, but it chilled me to the bone. You misunderstand me, Dawei. I don't want your money. My breath caught. What do you mean? He stood, walking toward me slowly. Do you remember our agreement? The memory struck me like a blade. If you cannot repay me in time, you will marry me and bear me children. I stumbled back. Master Sheng, please. I only need more time. My mother. He reached out, lifting my chin with a single finger. His eyes gleamed with satisfaction. I've given you time. 2 months. You failed. Now it's time you fulfill your part. I shook my head desperately. No, please. I can't. His hand tightened on my chin, forcing me to meet his gaze. You made a promise, Doe. Do you think you can break it without consequence? My knees hit the floor. I clasped my hands together, tears welling in my eyes. I'll do anything else. I'll work for you day and night. I'll clean your estate, serve your guests, just don't make me do this. For a moment, his face softened. Then he leaned closer, whispering, You're too beautiful to waste scrubbing floors. His breath brushed against my ear, and I flinched. He laughed quietly. Do you know, Doe, how long I've wanted to make you mine? When you came to me in the rain, desperate and trembling, you were the most exquisite thing I'd ever seen. Please, I whispered, voice breaking. Please don't. He pulled back slightly, studying my face. It's too late to beg now. You owe me a life, Doe, and I intend to collect it. That night, I returned home numb. The stars above seemed far away, like gods who had turned their faces from me. Mother was waiting by the doorway, worry etched into her face. Doe, what's wrong? I tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. I simply smiled and said, Nothing, Mother. Just tired. But she knew. She always knew. She reached out, taking my hand in hers. Whatever it is, we'll face it together, my son. I wanted to believe her. But as I looked into her tired eyes, I realized that some battles must be fought alone, to protect the ones we love from ever knowing how dark the world truly is. Days later, Sheng's men came with the red wedding cloths. The villagers whispered as they passed, some in pity, others in envy. How lucky, they said, that a poor boy should catch the eye of a wealthy man. Lucky. If only they knew. The wedding was quiet, formal. No joy, no laughter. Just the sound of the ceremonial drums echoing hollowly against the marble halls. When Sheng placed the ring on my finger, I felt the weight of it like a shackle. His smile was serene, the smile of a man who had finally claimed his prize. As for me, I closed my eyes and whispered silently, Forgive me, Mother. For her sake, I would endure. For now. The first thing I learned after marrying Sheng was that silence could be as heavy as a chain. The wedding had been short and empty, a contract written in the language of power, not love. There were no guests from my side, no laughter, no warmth. Just the faint scent of incense, the dull gleam of gold, and Sheng's proud smile as he took my hand in front of his servants. I was no bride, no partner. I was a possession. He moved me into his manor, a vast estate with countless rooms, each more beautiful than anything I'd ever seen. Silk curtains drifted in the wind, candlelight flickered against jade floors, and the air was perfumed with sandalwood and lotus. Yet I had never felt so trapped. My quarters were in the eastern wing, far from Sheng's chambers. He told the servants to attend to me, but I could see it in their eyes, pity mixed with contempt. To them, I was the poor boy who had bought his mother's life with his own body. At first, Sheng was kind in his way. He would bring me gifts, fine robes, jewelry, even rare fruits from the capital. He spoke sweetly, called me my treasure, but there was something in his tone that made my skin crawl. His affection was not love. It was ownership, a constant reminder that my freedom was gone. Why so quiet, Doe? He asked one evening as we dined together. His robe shimmered under the lamplight, his hair tied neatly with a silver clasp. You should be smiling. You're the wife of a wealthy man now. I forced a small smile. I'm grateful, Master Sheng. His gaze darkened. Master? He repeated, amusement flickering in his eyes. You're my spouse. You should call me something more intimate. I hesitated. Sheng. He smiled, pleased. Better. You'll get used to it. But I didn't. The days turned into a blur of quiet humiliation. I wasn't allowed to work or leave the manor without permission. The servants treated me with false respect, bowing when Sheng was near, but sneering behind his back. At night, I often sat by the window, staring at the distant mountains, wondering if Mother was sleeping well. I missed her laugh, her stories, even the sound of her coughing in the next room. I wanted to run back to her, to the little hut by the stream. But every time I thought of it, Sheng's voice echoed in my mind. You owe me a life, Doe. One afternoon, I overheard the servants gossiping as they swept the courtyard. Did you hear? One whispered. Master Sheng is bringing home another man tonight. A merchant from the city. Another one? The other said, smirking. Poor Doe. He must be used to it by now. Their laughter cut through me like knives. That night, I found out the truth. Sheng returned home late, drunk on wine and satisfaction. He didn't even look at me as he passed my door. But I saw him, his arm around a stranger, a man dressed in embroidered robes, both of them laughing as they disappeared into the west chamber. I stood there in the dark hallway, my heart pounding, my breath shallow. Something inside me cracked, a soundless shatter that no one heard but me. From that night on, the humiliation never stopped. Sheng made no effort to hide his indulgences. He would bring men into our home, dine with them, flirt openly, and sometimes even make sure I was there to see it. When I turned away, he'd smile cruelly. "Are you jealous, my Dawei?" he'd ask, pouring himself another cup of wine. "You should be honored. You're the one I chose to marry. The others are just amusements." "I'm not jealous," I would whisper, even as my voice trembled. He'd laugh softly, setting down his cup. "Good. Then behave like it." One evening, after yet another one of his lavish feasts, I finally broke. I waited until he had fallen asleep, his breath heavy with alcohol, and crept out into the courtyard. The moon hung low over the lotus pond, its reflection rippling across the water. I fell to my knees on the cold stones, clutching my chest. "Father," I whispered to the heavens, "if you can hear me, what did I do wrong? Why was I born to suffer like this?" My tears fell into the pond, distorting the moonlight. For the first time in years, I wished I had never been born. If this was the price of saving my mother, then perhaps I had traded one death for another. The next morning, I woke to a commotion. Sheng's voice echoed through the hall, sharp and furious. When I stepped out, I saw him arguing with a servant. "How dare you let my guest leave without breakfast?" "Useless fools," he shouted, throwing a porcelain cup to the ground. The servant bowed deeply. "Forgive me, master." "Enough!" Sheng turned toward me then, his eyes narrowing. "You. Come here." My body froze. What did I do?" "Nothing," he said coldly. "But someone has to bear my anger." Before I could move, his hand struck my cheek, hard. The sound rang through the hall like thunder. I stumbled backward, tasting blood. "Sheng," I gasped. "Please, don't speak," he hissed. "You stand there looking pitiful, and I remember how you begged me in the rain. Perhaps I should have let your mother die." Those words hit harder than his hand. I stared at him, unable to breathe. "Don't say that," I whispered. He leaned closer, eyes filled with cruelty. "Then behave as you should as mine." He left me trembling in the corridor, surrounded by shards of porcelain and silence. From that day on, I avoided him as much as I could. But there was no escaping the walls of his mansion, no breaking the invisible chains he had bound me with. I stopped eating much. My body grew thin, my skin pale. Sometimes I thought I could see my reflection fading, like a ghost lingering in the wrong world. Then came the night everything ended. It was late, the moon hidden behind clouds, the air heavy with rain. Sheng came home drunk again, angrier than usual. I could hear him shouting before he even entered my room. "Dawei," he roared. "Where are you?" I stood up quickly, heart pounding. "I'm here." Before I could finish, he shoved open the door and stormed in. His eyes were bloodshot, his robe half open, his breath reeking of wine. "Why didn't you wait for me?" he demanded. "Do you think you can ignore me in my own house?" "I didn't," I began, but his hand struck me across the face again. I staggered backward, crashing into the table. "Please, Sheng." He grabbed me by the collar, shaking me. "You ungrateful fool. I gave you everything, and still you look at me with those accusing eyes." I tried to speak, but his rage drowned everything. He shoved me again, harder this time. My back hit the wall, and then the world exploded into pain. A blinding flash. The sharp crack of my skull against stone. Then silence. I remember falling, the room spinning, the taste of blood on my tongue. Sheng's voice grew distant, like an echo fading in a storm. And then nothing. No pain. No sound. Just darkness. But in that darkness, a voice whispered to me, soft, ancient, filled with warmth. "Your suffering is not the end, Dawei. You have another life to live, another chance to love." I tried to open my eyes. I felt weightless, floating. My body was gone, but my heart still beat, somewhere, somehow. Light pierced the void, and I was falling, not into death, but into another world. Darkness. It was the kind that had weight, the kind that pressed against my chest until I forgot how to breathe. I thought it was death. Perhaps it was. After all, I had felt my skull crack, heard the last sound of my heartbeat fading into silence. But then came the wind. Soft at first, like fingers brushing my hair. Then a rush of warmth, a whisper of rain, the scent of wild blossoms. My eyes fluttered open and light poured in, blinding in gold. I gasped. Above me stretched a sky I had never seen, deep turquoise, streaked with crimson clouds that shimmered as if the world itself were made of silk. I lay on grass so soft it felt like a bed of feathers, and a river sang quietly nearby. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming. I sat up slowly. My hands, slender, unscarred, caught the light. My skin was smooth, my wrists delicate. My body younger. I blinked, heart pounding. What is this? My voice sounded softer too, like it belonged to someone else. I stumbled to the riverbank and stared at my reflection. The face that looked back at me was mine, yet not mine. My features were the same, but gentler, untouched by hardship. My hair, once dull from dust and sun, fell in dark waves over my shoulders, glinting like ink in moonlight. My eyes, still brown, seemed deeper somehow, as if they held the memory of two worlds. I touched my cheek, half expecting the illusion to vanish. It didn't. A rustle behind me made me turn. A figure emerged from between the trees. A young soldier in silver armor, his expression caught between awe and alarm. "You, who are you?" he demanded, his hand hovering near the hilt of his sword. I opened my mouth, but no sound came. How could I explain that I was a man who had died in another world, reborn in his own skin? I don't know, I whispered finally. The soldier frowned. "You're wearing no crest, no shoes. You fell from the sky. Are you some kind of spirit?" I hesitated, then shook my head. "Just lost." He stared at me for a long moment before sheathing his sword. "The Emperor will want to see you." "The Emperor?" I repeated. He nodded. "His Majesty is near. He's traveling to the southern temple. If you truly came from the heavens, he'll want to hear your tale himself." Before I could protest, he motioned for me to follow. And so I did, barefoot, dazed, heart beating too fast. The road wound through endless fields of golden reeds until the sound of hooves filled the air. A procession appeared, guards in lacquered armor, banners embroidered with dragons. At the center rode a man on a white stallion, his robe black as night, his crown gleaming faintly beneath the sun. The soldier bowed deeply. "Your Majesty, we found this stranger by the river. He claims to remember nothing." The Emperor turned his gaze toward me. And in that instant, I forgot how to breathe. He was young, no more than 25 perhaps, but his presence was vast, commanding, as though the earth itself bent toward him. His eyes were a dark, piercing gold, steady and unreadable, framed by lashes that cast shadows on his cheekbones. Yet there was gentleness there, too, hidden beneath the weight of power. When his gaze met mine, the world went still. "What is your name?" he asked. "Dawei," I said automatically, though the name felt both strange and familiar in this new place. "Dawei," he repeated, as if testing how it sounded. "And you have no memory of where you came from?" I hesitated. "Only pain. And then light." The Emperor dismounted. He was taller than I expected. As he stepped closer, the faint scent of sandalwood and rain surrounded him. Clean, warm, intoxicating. He studied me for a long time, then said softly, "Your eyes look as if they've seen too much for someone so young." Something inside me trembled. Maybe I have. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. Then he smiled, small, fleeting, but enough to make the air feel different. "Come with us. You'll stay under my protection until we learn who you are." "Your protection?" I echoed. "Yes," he said. "You fell from the heavens into my path. I'll take that as fate." We traveled to the imperial palace 2 days later, a city carved from jade and marble, with courtyards so wide they seemed to swallow the horizon. Servants bowed as we passed, murmuring about the mysterious boy found by the emperor's side. I was given a chamber overlooking a garden of plum blossoms. At night, I couldn't sleep. The memory of Sheng's cruelty still lingered in the back of my mind, and I feared waking to find it all a dream. But each dawn, the same golden light touched my skin, and I realized it was real. The emperor visited often. He told me his name was Li Ming, though everyone else called him His Majesty. When he spoke to me, however, he used my name as though it belonged to him. "Dawei," he said one afternoon as we walked among the flowering trees. "You're not from any province I know. Your speech, your manner, everything about you feels foreign, as if you carry another world in your eyes." "Maybe I do," I murmured. He glanced at me sideways. "Then what does your other world look like?" "Cold," I said quietly. "Lonely. His expression softened. Then I hope this one can be warmer. Our hands brushed briefly as we walked. The touch was accidental, or so I told myself, but the spark it left behind stayed long after we parted. Weeks passed, and the palace began to whisper. They said the emperor had taken a special liking to the strange boy from the river, that his majesty smiled more often now, that the boy's laughter could be heard echoing through the eastern gardens. I tried to deny it, tried to tell myself that what I felt was gratitude, not longing. But each time he looked at me, really looked at me, my heart betrayed me. One evening, during the Lantern Festival, the emperor invited me to his private terrace. The city below glittered with thousands of lights, and music drifted through the air. He handed me a cup of warm wine. "To new beginnings," he said. I smiled faintly. "Do you often drink with strangers who fall from the sky?" He chuckled, the sound low and smooth. "Only when they look like you." I felt my cheeks flush, the warmth of the wine spreading deeper than the drink alone could reach. "You shouldn't say things like that, Your Majesty." "Why not?" he asked, his eyes never leaving mine. "Do they make you uncomfortable?" "Yes," I admitted. "Because they make me forget who I am." He stepped closer, so near I could feel his breath against my skin. "Then perhaps it's time you stop remembering the pain of your old world." The music below swelled, a slow, wistful melody carried on the wind. He lifted a hand, brushed a loose strand of hair from my face. His fingers were warm, calloused, steady. For a moment, I thought he might kiss me. But instead, he said softly, "You deserve peace, Dawei." And somehow, those words touched deeper than any kiss could. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about his eyes, the way they saw through the walls I'd built, the way they seemed to promise something I didn't yet dare to believe in. For the first time in a long time, I fell asleep smiling. And far away, in the realm between worlds, I felt a shadow stir, a whisper from the life I had left behind. But here, under the Emperor's sky, I belonged to a new dawn. The palace had a rhythm of its own, a quiet pulse beneath the shimmer of gold and silk. By day it was filled with the rustle of robes, the murmur of courtiers, the sharp ring of officials arguing over matters of state. But by night, when lanterns glowed along the corridors and the scent of plum blossom filled the air, another world seemed to awaken. A world where words meant more in silence, and glances carried secrets no one dared to speak. It was in this world that Li Ming and I began to drift closer. I had grown accustomed to the palace routine. Mornings spent in the study gardens, afternoons helping the imperial scribes copy poetry, evenings walking by the lotus pond. Yet no matter where I went, his presence followed me. Sometimes it was his voice echoing down the corridor, sometimes the faint trace of sandalwood clinging to my sleeves after he passed. One morning, as I practiced writing characters on a scroll, the Emperor entered quietly. "Still awake at dawn?" he asked. I turned, startled, nearly spilling the ink. "Your Majesty, I didn't hear you come in." He smiled faintly. "You were too focused. I see your hand has steadied. These characters," he leaned close, eyes scanning the paper. "They're beautiful." I swallowed. His breath brushed my cheek, warm and soft. "I'm still learning," I murmured. "Then let me teach you." He took the brush from my fingers, his hand covering mine. The motion was slow, deliberate. The scent of his robes filled the space between us. Together we drew the next stroke, the black ink flowing like silk. "See," he whispered. "When you breathe with the brush, it follows your heart." I could barely hear him over the rush in my ears. Our hands were still joined, and his heartbeat felt steady against my back. When he finally stepped away, the room seemed colder. Later that day, word of the Emperor's visits began to spread. The court whispered again, though never within his hearing. They called me the celestial guest. Others, less kind, called me the beggar reborn. One evening, as I crossed the corridor with a tray of documents, a young noble stopped me. He was beautiful in the sharp, practiced way of courtiers, smiling lips, watchful eyes. "So you're the one who's caught His Majesty's eye," he said lightly. I bowed. "You're mistaken, my lord." "Am I?" His gaze slid over me, too knowing. "The Emperor hasn't shared his tea with anyone since the coronation, yet I hear he invites you often. Tell me, what spell did you cast?" "None," I said quietly. He smirked. "Then enjoy your luck while it lasts. The Emperor's favor is a flame, warm until it burns." His words clung to me long after he left. That night, I couldn't sleep. The rain fell softly outside, and the sound reminded me of my old world, of hunger, of loss, of nights spent waiting for morning. I thought of Li Ming's kindness, of the way his gaze lingered when he thought I wasn't watching. Why me? Why had he chosen to draw me close when the palace was filled with people far more worthy of his attention? The next morning, I was summoned to the emperor's private pavilion. When I arrived, he was standing beside the open window, watching the rain. "You're quiet today," he said without turning. "I didn't wish to disturb your majesty." "You never disturb me," he replied. Then softer. "But you hide something behind that silence." I hesitated. "Your majesty, I'm grateful for your kindness, but the others in the court." He turned then, his gaze sharp. "Have they said something to you?" I shook my head. "Nothing that matters." "Everything that touches you matters," he said firmly. He stepped closer, eyes burning with quiet intensity. "They don't understand. When I look at you, I feel—" He stopped, searching for words. "It's as though I've known you long before this life." The breath caught in my throat. "I feel the same," I whispered before I could stop myself. A heartbeat of silence. Then he reached out, fingertips grazing my jaw, tracing the line of my neck as if memorizing it. "I shouldn't," he murmured, his voice low. "But I can't help it." Neither of us moved for a long moment. The rain outside slowed to a whisper, the whole world holding its breath. Then slowly, he let his hand fall away. "Forgive me," he said. "I'm the emperor. I shouldn't burden you with such thoughts." "You haven't," I said quietly. "You've given me warmth." Something flickered in his eyes, something tender and fierce all at once. "Then promise me one thing," he said. "No matter what happens in this palace, no matter what they say, never doubt that you belong here." That evening, during the Festival of the Moon, the emperor invited me to accompany him to the terrace once again. Lanterns floated on the lake below, their reflections dancing like stars. Music drifted from the courtyards, slow and haunting. He poured wine into 2 cups. "To the heavens that brought you here," he said softly. I raised my cup. "And to the world that let me stay." We drank. The wine was sweet, heavy with plum. The night air shimmered between us, filled with unspoken words. "Dawei," he said after a long pause. "If you could return to where you came from, would you go?" I thought of my mother, of the life I'd left behind, of the pain that world had given me. Then I looked at him, at the warmth in his eyes, the calm strength in his voice. "No," I said. "Not anymore." He smiled, and it reached his eyes. "Then stay," he murmured. "Stay with me." The words hung between us, fragile and luminous. He reached out, slowly, as if afraid I might disappear, and brushed his thumb along my cheek. I didn't pull away. The world seemed to blur, the music fading until there was only his gaze, steady and deep as the night. That night I dreamed. I stood again by the river where I had first awoken. The moon hung low, silver on the water, and a voice whispered my name, soft, distant, familiar. When I turned, I saw Li Ming standing there, his robes rippling like smoke. "Dawei," he said, "our fates are tied by more than this life. Remember that." Before I could answer, the river swallowed his reflection, and I woke to find the dawn light spilling across my pillow. Days turned to weeks. The emperor and I grew inseparable, 2 shadows that the palace could not pry apart. But behind the silken smiles and bowing courtiers, I felt something dark stirring, a thread of envy, a whisper of danger. And one night, when the moon was full again, I would discover that even love in a palace could come at a price. I often wondered if happiness was meant to last forever, or if the heavens gave it only in moments, fleeting and precious, so that we would learn to treasure it. For a time, I believed the palace was my heaven. But heaven, I would learn, could be fragile. The first sign came with the whispers. One evening, as I crossed the jade bridge that led to the emperor's private gardens, I overheard 2 eunuchs murmuring in the shadows. "They say His Majesty has neglected council meetings for this commoner," one hissed. "Commoner?" the other scoffed. "He's no longer that. He sleeps under silk and walks beside the dragon throne." "And what of the man who came to the outer court yesterday? The stranger dressed like a noble from the far provinces? I heard he came seeking the emperor's audience, claiming he knew Dawei before he entered the palace." The words struck me like ice. A man from the far provinces, someone who knew me? I didn't wait to hear more. My hands trembled as I clutched the railing. The world seemed to tilt beneath me, the lanterns blurring into streaks of gold. Could it be? No, it was impossible. Sheng was gone. He had died in my world. I had seen my own blood. My last memory was the thud of my body against the wall and the silence that followed. There was no way he could have followed me here. And yet, that night, when I stood beside the emperor in the Hall of Radiant Clouds, I felt a presence watching from the crowd. A gaze too familiar to mistake. After the court dispersed, I followed the shadow down the corridor and out through the rear gate. The moonlight caught his face, and my breath caught in my throat. "Sheng," I whispered. He smiled, the same cruel, beautiful smile that haunted my nightmares. "So it's true," he said softly. "You really did find another world." My knees weakened. "You shouldn't be here." "Why not?" He stepped closer. "You made me a promise once, Dawei, that if you couldn't repay me, you would be mine. Even death doesn't break that vow." I backed away. "That life is gone." He reached for me, his hand brushing my sleeve. "Then why do you still wear the same eyes that begged me for mercy?" I pulled free, trembling. "Because I learned what mercy really means." For a moment, something dark flickered in his gaze. "You think that emperor of yours loves you? He's just another man drunk on beauty. When he tires of you, he'll cast you aside, just like I did. Then you've already proven why I'll never go back to you," I said. My voice was shaking, but I didn't lower my gaze. "Because he doesn't own me. He sees me." "Dawei!" The voice cut through the tension like thunder. I turned to see the emperor striding toward us, guards following close behind. His eyes were storm-dark, his expression unreadable. Sheng laughed. "Ah, so this is the great emperor." Li Ming's gaze flicked to me. "Who is he?" Before I could speak, Sheng bowed mockingly. "Someone who knows what your beloved hides." "Enough," the emperor said sharply. "You're trespassing on imperial ground." But Sheng's eyes never left mine. "You can dress him in silk, call him your treasure, but you'll never erase what he was." Li Ming stepped forward, pulling me behind him. He was someone who suffered, and yet he rose above it. "That's why I love him." The words struck through the air, clear and fearless. For a moment, the world stilled. Sheng's smirk faltered. "Love." He let out a bitter laugh. "Then you're a fool." "Perhaps," Li Ming said quietly. "But he is the reason I choose to be." He turned to me, his voice softening. "Dawei, this man, he has no place in your world anymore. You're not bound to him." I met his gaze, tears burning in my eyes. "I know." And then I faced Sheng one last time. "Whatever debt I owed you ended the moment you let me die. You lost the right to my soul that day." He stared at me, his lips trembling, as though he hadn't expected me to say it. For a flicker of a moment, I saw something human in his eyes, regret, maybe sorrow. Then he stepped back, and the moonlight swallowed him. When I looked again, he was gone. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stood by the lotus pond, watching the reflections ripple across the surface. The air was cool, scented with jasmine. The emperor came to stand beside me, silent for a while. Then he said softly, "You don't need to fear the past anymore." I nodded. "I know, but sometimes it feels like I brought it with me." He turned toward me, eyes gentle. "We all carry shadows, but even shadows fade at dawn." He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "Dawei, stay with me, not as a servant or a guest. Stay as my equal. My heart has already chosen you." I looked up at him, unable to speak. All the pain, all the loneliness, every scar I'd ever hidden seemed to dissolve under his gaze. "I want to," I whispered. "More than anything." He smiled then, the kind of smile that reached deep enough to make the stars seem closer. "Then stay," he murmured. He took my hand, lifting it gently to his lips. The touch was soft, reverent, a promise made without words. And for the first time in both my lives, I felt whole. Years passed, and the palace changed with them. The courtiers who once whispered my name now bowed with respect. I became not the emperor's favored consort, but his advisor, his companion, his heart. On spring mornings, we walked the gardens together. In winter, we read poetry by the fire. Sometimes, when the snow fell silently beyond the window, he would hold me close and whisper, "If there's another world after this, promise you'll find me again." And I would smile, resting my head on his shoulder. I always do, because love, once found, is never truly lost. As the dawn rose over the palace, gold spilling over the tiles, the air alive with birdsong, I thought of the boy I once was, the pain I had endured, the death that had once seemed an ending. But it wasn't an ending at all. It was the beginning of forever.